The snow had not stopped since dawn. It lay thick along the windowsills, soft and silent, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Inside the Parker house, the air still smelled of lilies and melted candle wax from the funeral the night before. The black ribbon on the front door fluttered slightly every time the wind howled. Maggie Parker stood in the center of the living room, her hands trembling around the handle of her old brown suitcase. Across from her, Vanessa Cole, her daughter-in-law, adjusted the black veil on her hat. Her voice, when it came, was calm, too calm. "This house is mine now," she said, looking around as if she were testing how the words fit in the space. "I need time and space to grieve." The word grieve landed with a chill sharper than the wind outside. Maggie blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. Her son, Daniel, had been buried not 24 hours ago. His laughter still seemed to echo faintly from the staircase, the one he'd raced down every Christmas morning. And now this woman, his widow, was asking her to leave. "I'll give you until tomorrow evening to pack," Vanessa continued, her tone crisp, businesslike. "It's better for both of us." Maggie's throat closed. She wanted to protest, to remind her that she'd sold her own home 5 years ago, handed over $40,000 for their down payment, because Daniel had said it would be temporary. She had trusted them, moved into the guest room, cooked dinners, watered plants, babysat the dog. Family was supposed to mean something. But now, looking at Vanessa's cold, composed face, Maggie realized that family had died the same night her son did. "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "People grieve differently." Vanessa offered a faint, polite smile, the kind given to strangers in grocery store aisles. "Good luck, Maggie." That was all. No hug. No trace of shared loss. Just a dismissal wrapped in manners. Outside, the sky was a flat gray sheet. Maggie's breath fogged as she loaded boxes into her aging sedan. The driveway glistened with ice, and her fingers burned from the cold. Behind her, the massive white house loomed, its windows reflecting nothing but snow. For a brief second, she thought she saw Daniel's shadow in the upstairs window, watching her. Then the curtains moved, and it was gone. She drove through the storm in silence, past the frozen lake and shuttered diners of Burlington, Vermont, until the glowing sign of a Hampton Inn appeared like a small mercy. The room they gave her smelled faintly of disinfectant and loneliness. The bedspread was stiff, the artwork generic, flowers printed by a machine. She set down her suitcase and stared at her reflection in the mirror. A tired woman of 67 looked back. Widow, mother, homeless. The phone on the nightstand buzzed. Unknown number. "Mrs. Parker," a man's voice said. "This is James Whitaker, your son's attorney. I'm calling to inform you that Daniel's will is scheduled for reading next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Your presence is required." "My presence?" Maggie repeated, dazed. "Yes, ma'am. You've been named in the document." After he hung up, she sat there for a long moment, the hum of the heater filling the silence. Daniel had left her something. Maybe not much, but something. A sign that he'd thought of her. She opened her small notebook, the one she used for grocery lists, and wrote down the time and address with steady hands. Outside, snow still drifted beneath the yellow light of the street lamp. Maggie poured herself a weak cup of hotel coffee, then pulled her late husband's old pocket Bible from her purse. Between its pages lay a pressed lilac from Daniel's wedding. She touched it lightly, whispering, "If you plan something, son, I'll be strong enough to find it." That night, sleep refused to come. The radiator clanked. Somewhere down the hall, a door slammed. Maggie lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling both hollow and strangely alert. If this was rock bottom, she thought, there was only one direction left to go. By morning, the storm had softened. The sky opened pale and pink over the parking lot. Maggie zipped her coat, stepped into the cold, and breathed in the scent of wet snow. She didn't know what the will would reveal, but for the first time since Daniel's heart stopped beating, she felt something new beneath her grief. Not despair, anticipation. The law office smelled faintly of polished mahogany and lemon oil, the kind of place where secrets were handled delicately and sealed with signatures. Maggie Parker sat in the waiting area, her hands folded neatly over her purse. Her black coat looked too heavy under the warm lights, her face drawn but steady. Across the room, Vanessa Cole clicked across the marble floor in designer heels, her brother Marcus at her side. They looked like they had come to close a business deal, not to read the last words of a man they claimed to love. James Whitaker, Daniel's attorney, appeared at precisely 2 o'clock. "Mrs. Cole, Mrs. Parker, thank you for coming," he said with his practiced calm. "This won't take long." Vanessa offered a smile thin enough to cut glass. "It's fine. I just want to make sure things are handled properly." Maggie nodded politely, though her chest tightened. She knew what was coming. The house, the cars, the savings. Vanessa would take everything. That's how it worked. Widows first, mothers last. Whitaker began to read. His voice was measured, professional, impersonal. "To my beloved wife, Vanessa Cole Parker, I leave the family residence, vehicles, and all assets held jointly in our names." Vanessa's chin lifted slightly at each item, as if receiving awards. Marcus scribbled notes like an accountant tallying profit. Maggie sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the lawyer's mouth, waiting for her name, already braced for the disappointment. Then Whitaker turned a page. His tone changed just enough for the air to shift. "Additionally, to my mother, Maggie Parker, who provided the down payment for our home and asked for nothing in return, I leave the contents of Safety Deposit Box E3D7 at First National Bank, along with all documentation and accounts contained therein." A pause, the kind that makes the temperature in a room drop a few degrees. "What box?" Vanessa snapped. "Daniel never mentioned a deposit box." Whitaker met her gaze calmly. Apparently, he maintained it privately. "Access is restricted to Mrs. Parker only." Vanessa's jaw tightened. That doesn't sound legal. "Marcus," her brother leaned forward, his lawyer instincts flickering. "We'll need to review that clause." "You're welcome to," Whitaker said, sliding the will across the desk. "But I witnessed Daniel's signature myself. He was lucid and deliberate. This clause is airtight." Maggie's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She hadn't expected to be mentioned at all, certainly not like this. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but words failed her. When the meeting ended, Vanessa stalked past her, perfume and anger trailing behind. "This isn't over," she muttered. Maggie didn't answer. She walked out into the crisp air, the snow crunching under her sensible shoes, clutching the sealed envelope Whitaker had handed her. Inside were the key and instructions for accessing the deposit box. 3 days later, Mrs. Peterson, the bank manager, met her at the entrance to the vault. The walls hummed faintly with the sound of fluorescent lights. "Your son rented this box about 5 years ago," she said kindly. "He was one of our most meticulous clients." 5 years. Maggie's breath caught. 5 years ago was when she had sold her home, when she'd handed Daniel that $40,000 check and said, "This is just to help you start." The door to the vault opened with a low mechanical sigh. Box E3D7 slid out from the steel wall, heavier than it looked. Maggie's fingers trembled as she turned the small brass key. Inside, on top of a stack of documents, lay a single envelope addressed in Daniel's familiar handwriting. She unfolded the letter slowly. "Mom," it began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Vanessa has probably shown you who she really is. I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. I've known for a long time what she's capable of. That's why I started preparing for this moment." Maggie pressed a hand to her mouth. "You gave us $40,000 for our down payment. I know you saw it as a loan, even though you never said it aloud. I've been investing that money quietly over the last 5 years, adding to it whenever I could. The accounts in this box are in your name. The total value is over $185,000. She stared at the numbers on the statements beneath the letter. Mutual funds, bonds, index accounts. The figures blurred as her tears fell onto the paper. But money isn't the only thing I left you. There's another folder labeled Documentation. Inside are messages, screenshots, and statements. I kept them in case you ever needed proof of how you were treated. Mom, I wanted to make sure that no one could ever make you feel small again. Maggie's breath came in short, sharp waves. Her son had seen it all. The insults, the manipulation, the quiet cruelty she'd tried so hard to ignore. He had built her a shield out of truth and numbers. When she finally left the vault, the weight of grief on her chest had shifted, no longer crushing, but solid, real, purposeful. Outside, the winter light hit her face. Her phone buzzed. Vanessa. Lunch tomorrow? The message read. Let's talk like family. Maggie looked at the screen for a long moment, then slipped the phone back into her coat pocket. Sure, she whispered to the cold air. Let's talk. The table gleamed under soft afternoon light, set with white china and gold-edged glasses that caught the sun like tiny knives. A bouquet of roses sat neatly in the center, too perfect, too arranged. Vanessa Cole stood at the end of the dining room, her voice dripping honey. Chicken salad, your favorite, Maggie. I made it myself. Maggie Parker smiled faintly, lowering herself into the chair across from her. The air smelled of lemon polish and artificial warmth. The house was exactly as she had left it, except emptier somehow, like it was holding its breath. She noticed the photo of Daniel on the wall behind Vanessa, his college graduation, bright smile, frozen forever. It's kind of you to invite me, Maggie said softly. Of course, Vanessa replied. We're family, and family should talk, especially about what Daniel left behind. She laughed lightly, but the sound didn't reach her eyes. Maggie stirred the iced tea Vanessa had poured, watching the ice spin like slow-moving glass. You mean the safety deposit box? Vanessa's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Oh, that. Yes, I just thought, maybe we could pool resources. Combine what's in there with the insurance money. You know, make wise investments. Keep Daniel's legacy alive. Maggie took a sip of tea. It was bitter. Wise investments. That sounds responsible. I have excellent advisors, Vanessa said quickly, her tone brightening. We could double it in a year, maybe triple. You'd never have to worry about a thing. Maggie looked up. That's funny, she said quietly, because I wasn't worried. Until now. The words landed like a pin drop. Vanessa froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? Maggie reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She turned the screen toward Vanessa. On it, a screenshot glowed in crisp black and white. A text message from Vanessa to her sister 6 months earlier. Can't wait until the old bat moves out. I'm turning her room into a home gym. The color drained from Vanessa's face. That's private, she said quickly. You had no right. Daniel had every right, Maggie interrupted. It was his house, and you were talking about his mother. Vanessa's lips trembled. I didn't mean it. It was a joke. Grief makes people say things. He was alive when you wrote that. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the air. Maggie placed her phone on the table, face down. He saw everything, Vanessa. Every message, every email, every plan you whispered to Marcus about restructuring the household budget. He documented it all. Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. That's not true. It's all in the folder Daniel left me. 5 years of notes, screenshots, and statements. Maggie leaned forward slightly. Did you know he started preparing that folder the same week you told him I was a burden? Vanessa's breathing quickened. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove it, Maggie said. Daniel already did. The wind outside picked up, rattling the glass. Maggie opened another envelope, this time pulling out a bank statement. She slid it across the table. The total gleamed on the page. $185,000. Vanessa's eyes widened. That's impossible. Daniel invested the money I gave for your down payment, Maggie said, her voice calm but steady. He grew it into something more, something safe, for me. That money belongs to the estate, Vanessa burst out. You can't just take it. Take it. Maggie's tone softened. No, Vanessa. It was returned to me, with interest. Vanessa stood so fast her chair screeched against the hardwood. You're trying to ruin me. You always wanted him to choose you over me. I wanted my son to be happy, Maggie said, but you made that impossible. For a long moment they stared at each other across the table, the widow in white, trembling with rage, and the mother in black, unmoved and unbroken. The light outside dimmed, clouds swallowing the sun. Finally, Maggie rose, gathering her purse. I should thank you, she said. If you hadn't thrown me out, I never would have discovered who Daniel truly was. Vanessa's voice cracked. You think you've won? Maggie turned to the doorway. No, she said, pausing. This isn't a victory. It's balance restored. She left the house without looking back. Behind her, the sound of shattering glass echoed faintly through the quiet halls. The morning after the confrontation, Maggie Parker sat at a small cafe downtown, a cup of coffee cooling between her hands. Through the fogged window, she watched snow melt off the rooftops in watery streaks. The city was beginning to thaw, and so was she. Across from her sat James Whitaker, the attorney who had read her son's will, still as calm and deliberate as ever. I'm not suing her, Maggie said, breaking the silence. There's no point in dragging his memory through courtrooms. Whitaker nodded. Then what would you like me to do? I just want every account Daniel opened in my name transferred securely, she said. I want my independence protected. No one, especially Vanessa, should have access to a cent. I'll see to it personally, he replied, his tone respectful. Your son was meticulous. He left nothing unfinished. Maggie smiled faintly. That sounds like him. Outside, the snowflakes that fell the night before had dissolved into clean puddles along the sidewalks. Maggie saw her reflection rippling in one, older perhaps, but steadier. The same woman who'd once been thrown out into a blizzard now sat planning her own future. That week, she signed a lease for a studio apartment near the public library and a small church she used to attend with Daniel as a boy. The place wasn't big, but the window faced a tall maple tree, and the light in the mornings was golden. The landlord, a retired Navy veteran, knocked shyly when she moved in. Discount for teachers, he said, noticing the old certificate framed in her hands. Maggie laughed. You'd be surprised how little I remember about algebra, but I'll take the discount. She filled the space slowly. One thrifted armchair, a lamp with a yellow shade, and a single framed photo of Daniel on her desk. On the windowsill, a line of salt still clung to the wood from last night's snow. It reminded her of the hotel, of the drive through Vermont's white silence, of the woman who had nearly broken and didn't. That afternoon, her phone buzzed. Vanessa, I'm sorry for what I said. If you ever need anything, please let me know. Maggie read it once, twice, then archived it. She didn't need vengeance. She didn't even need forgiveness. What she needed, she already had. Peace. A week later, another email came. This time an invoice for funeral expenses, forwarded by Marcus and CC'd to Whitaker. It was an attempt to claw back control, to remind her of some supposed debt. She didn't bother replying. Whitaker handled it for her with elegant precision, attaching the documents Daniel had kept. The receipts for the very expenses Vanessa had already charged to his credit cards for spa treatments and designer dresses. The email thread died after that. No apology, no argument, just silence. One morning, Maggie volunteered at the local library to read stories to children. She opened a book titled Brave Little Hearts and read aloud to a circle of small faces. The line that made her pause was simple. Heroes are just ordinary people who decide to be brave. Her throat tightened. Daniel had been that kind of hero, quiet, constant, the sort who fought cruelty not with shouting, but with truth. Even from beyond the grave, he had protected her. That night, she cooked herself a small dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and sat by the window as the sky turned deep blue. On the chair beside her lay Daniel's old gray sweater, folded neatly. She placed her hand over it, not in grief, but gratitude. Before bed, she reread the final line of his letter, framed now on her nightstand. "Mom, don't tell Vanessa anything until you're safe. I just want you to breathe." She closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm breathing now, son." The next morning, the world outside glittered with frost. Maggie stepped onto her balcony with a mug of coffee and looked down at the thin crust of snow melting along the railing. Just a faint white line of salt, like a signature from winter saying goodbye. She smiled to herself. "Justice doesn't shout," she murmured. "It arrives." Then she turned back inside, sunlight pooling at her feet, and wrote the first page of a new journal. "I chose dignity. The rest I'll leave to the truth."